Hello, welcome to ThePrint. I am Amana Begam Ansari. Imarat-e-Shariah, a strong socio-religious group with a big influence on a section of Indian Muslim, recently organized a huge protest at Patna's Gandhi's Maidan. The rally named Wakf Bachao Sanvidhan Bachao, basically Save the Wakf, Save the Constitution, which quickly gained momentum with thousands of Muslims protesters from Bihar and nearby states vocally condemning the Wakf Act Amendment Bill, calling it as a violation of both constitutional right and religious freedom. This was not just a protest, it was a firm declaration against a law perceived as an infringement on fundamental freedoms that many believes must be protected at all costs. However, speaker at the rally claimed that the Waqf Amendment Act crushes not only the Islamic principle of Waqf, charitable endowment, but also assaults the very core of religious autonomy. Faisal Wali Rahmani, head of Imarat-e-Shariah, made it clear the act is a dangerous overreach that jeopardizes the community's ability to govern its own affairs. This conference, he declared, is a peaceful constitutional demand to roll back this draconian legislation. His words rang out as a challenge to those who would allow such overreach to stand unchecked. I fully agree that every Indian has the right to free speech and peaceful protest as guaranteed by our constitution, but the argument surrounding religious autonomy is far more complicated than it seems. This notion of autonomy isn't about personal religious practices, it's about collective and organizational control. The idea that a religious group should have the unrestricted right to manage its own affairs raises some troubling questions. First, does this imply that such a group is somehow separate, not truly a part of a larger nation? Second, is there not a risk in projecting this image of self containment as though the community exists outside the national fabric? The implications are far more profound than they may appear. Uh, what if every community or tribe starts to argue that no one has the right to interfere in their affairs, claiming that their practices and core values are above the reach of national laws or human rights? Imagine a community that argues that government should have no say in child marriages, defending it as a matter of religious or cultural tradition. Would such a stand be accepted simply because it aligns with the idea that each group should be able to uphold its own values? Surely we would not accept such a practices under the guise of religious freedom. So at what point do we draw the line between protecting religious rights and ensuring that these practices basically don't violate human rights or endanger individuals? The core issue is whether any belief or practice, no matter how deeply rooted in religion or culture, can be allowed to override the fundamental principle of justice, equality, and human dignity. When leaders of the Muslim community, or let's say any religious group, invoke the constitution, they often present it as though it grants them unfettered right to religious freedom, one that allows them to manage their affairs without any interference from the state or its legislature, or even the judiciary. But what is overlooked is that this right to religious freedom is not absolute or separate from other constitutional values. It exists within a broader framework that include human rights, equality, and justice for all citizens. The Constitution, in its design, ensures religious freedom, but it does so with the understanding that such freedom must never come at the expense of the dignity of right of others. This means that the Constitution's values, those of equality and justice, must always take precedence over any individual or collective religious right when they begin to infringe on these fundamental principles. So once we are clear on this, we can oppose Waqf amendments that we believe infringing upon our rights. The idea that any community has the inherent right to manage its own affair solely under the umbrella of constitutional right is a dangerous one. As I make this distinction, it is crucial to point out some things. While the Patna protest may be framed as a defense of constitutional right, the very organization leading it, Imarat-e-Shariah, operates a parallel system within the Muslim personal law framework despite lacking formal judicial authority. The argument often put forward is that These bodies deal with matter like marriage, divorce, inheritance, and waqf when all parties involved consent to the process. However, we all know that the reality of social pressure within Indian Muslim society. In practice, these institutions often function without any regard for constitutional value that guarantee equality and human right for all citizens, particularly women. So this contradiction is visible when they invoke the constitution to protect their own interests but fail to understand the very values it stands for. The constitution is not just meant to protect religious autonomy and the collective religious right of a community. It is also supposed to protect the fundamental right of every individual, regardless of their religion or background. So moreover, such a protests and gathering only represents a section of Indian Muslims, not each and every one of us. These events are led mostly by elite Ashraf Muslim, with Pasmandas being utilized as a mob follower. It is disheartening for me to see how these institutions controlled by Ashrafs continue to use Pasmandas as a pawn in their own power negotiation while claiming to represent the community as a whole. Take, for example, the claim made during this protest that Fazal Wali Rahmani warned that after the Waqf Board amendment, anyone could lay claim to Muslim religious site. If tomorrow someone demands archaeological proof of religious symbol or history on Ashokan pillar or ancient monument, what will be the criteria for preservation? Such a rhetoric is more about fear-mongering than factual understanding, distracting from the real issues at hand and muddying the water with speculation and confusion. For more such a video, keep watching, friend.